Mr. Altrino. Mr. Winslow.
Here.
Superintendent Smith.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Kasabian. Ms. Oliver.
18.
We are going to take a moment to go out of order and begin our meeting with a moment of recognition for the life of Bill Minnie, who is a longtime resident of the city, but also a longtime employee of the Malden Public Schools, and then in the later part of his career, a member of this committee for approaching 18 or almost 20 years, I believe. Bill served in many, many ways and contributed in many ways to improve the overall delivery of services for the Malden Public Schools, and we'd just like to take a moment and remember his contributions, thank his family for all the time he was able to spend with us in the effort to make the Malden Public Schools better. So please rise for one moment. Thank you. The first item of business is the approval of minutes for several sessions, the executive session of June 22nd, 2009, regular session of the same date, and also the regular session of August 3rd, 2009. We need a motion on those minutes. So moved. Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Next portion of the meeting is public comment. And now is the time for anyone in the audience to approach the committee to address any of the topics of tonight's agenda. Seeing none, we'll consider that portion of the meeting closed. Move on to student achievement and superintendent's reports and hear from the superintendent on those matters.
Thank you very much. I want to start out with just some accomplishments, students, teachers, the whole school department to kick off the school year. First of all, I just want to say that we experienced an absolutely fantastic opening to the school year. I was in all of the schools, visited many classrooms, and I think the tenor is incredibly upbeat. Frankly, if you go into the schools, it seems like we're well into October. It's running well. The routines are established, and I just think we have a great deal to be proud of in terms of all of the work that our principals and teachers put into opening the year on a terrific note. We've already conducted a literacy institute at the beginning of the year for all of our teachers. We followed it up with a professional development day in the schools, and again, I think it's a tremendous accomplishment and a tip of the hat to all of the teachers and the administrators who are involved in that. Give you a sense of what each of the schools has been doing and how busy it's been even since August. Dale Angelico Hart, the principal of Linden School, just sent me a quick note and said since August, at the Linden School alone, we have had a kindergarten play date where we invited parents, an orientation to all of the parents, a welcome back bash ice cream party for all the families, a Title I coffee for parents of students who are receiving Title I services, and a back-to-school open house. And school is only 2 or 3 weeks into session. And this is a representative sample of the work that's already going on in each of the schools. So it's been a great accomplishment and a great start. Now, moving to students, though, I do want to mention some very special accomplishments of our students over the course of the summer. We had a number of Malden High School students who participated in a summer search program that was coordinated by our high school guidance counselor, Aaron Craven. I want to give a special thanks to Aaron. I want to tell you a little bit about what these kids accomplished. Jayla Abdul Nabi spent 3 weeks on an outward-bound backpacking and canoeing course in Minnesota, followed by her completion of Northfield Mount Herman's academic enrichment program for 4 weeks during the summer. Layla Abdul Nabi took 2 college credit classes at Syracuse University. Amanda Benoit traveled to Finland this summer for a summer program with American Field Service. We had a number of other students who traveled to other countries, including New Zealand, Italy, and Thailand through American Field Service opportunities. We also had a student who traveled to Brazil, Dan Ling, I should say, who participated in the global leadership adventures there, and while he was there, he participated in local community center activities, studied Portuguese, and explored Brazilian culture. It was a lot different from what I used to do during the summer. We had a number of students also traveling to other parts of the country for outward bound experiences, including Minnesota and Montana. Gail Wagnack in Montana also was involved not only in a wilderness adventure activity, but also provided community service on the Blackfeet Native American Reservation. Again, just an incredible cross-section of kids participating in a variety of activities this summer, extending their learning experiences beyond the high school, and special thanks, I think, are in order to Erin Craven and for all of the work that she put into putting this work, or these summer experiences together for our kids. And lastly, I want to read a poem that Carol Keenan from Salemwood sent to me. This poem is by Isaiah Irby. Isaiah Irby submitted it last year. Isaiah was in Ms. Peasley's grade 8 computer class, and this was submitted the last week of school last year. It was submitted also to the National Amateur Poetry Contest, and it will be published in The Wishing Well, which is a book about adolescent poetry. It's a very, very special, touching poem, and I wanted to share it with you to just give you another sense of how fabulous our kids are. The poem is Lonely Star. I am lonely like an abandoned baby. I am lonely like an uncharted island. Lonely thinking about my mother every day of my life. Lonely believing no one loves me. I am a lost child searching for a family. I am the last fish swimming in the middle of the ocean. I am the last leaf on the tree in fall. I am like a lost kid away from his parents. I am lonely as the last kernel in the popcorn bag. I am as lonely as a shooting star going through the night sky. I am lonely, but I am still a star. That was by Isaiah Irby, and I want to give very, very special thanks to Isaiah, also to Ms. Peasley, and to Ms. Keenan for sharing that poem. It's a tremendous start to the school year when we get to have an opportunity to contribute to so many shooting stars like Isaiah. So that's it for accomplishments. Any comments, questions?
Questions?
Before I go on? Okay. I'd like to go into Superintendent's report. Budget update you have in your packet, as we have each month, an update of expenditures thus far into the school year, submitted by Ms. Oliver. If anybody has any questions about those, I'd be happy to entertain those now, or Irene can entertain those. Okay, John, Mr. Froyo.
Yes, Irene, on second page. Ed Supplies, CAD High School. Where's that coming from? Oh, I'm talking about the... we're not talking about...
Not transfers.
That's later.
We'll do those later. Yep, we're talking about the pie chart expenditures.
So.
Okay? All right. We'll move forward. I'm going to move forward to the strategic plan. Everybody has a copy of the strategic plan that was put together. I want to give just a little bit of background so folks who in the audience or watching are not familiar with the genesis of that plan. Excuse me. No, that's just for the audience. Yeah. And actually, if any members of the audience would like to have a copy of it, we've got some extra copies that we brought for the audience. If you'd like to come and get one. You can. Okay. We're going to wait. As I said, we will wait until the next committee to discuss the strategic plan. I apologize for you not having it. But I would like to let me just, since it is in hand, nevertheless give a sense to folks of what the genesis of the plan was. From March through August of this year, a strategic plan committee met that included representatives of parents, teachers, administrators, other community members, students. The names of the members of the committee are in the packet that you just received. And the group worked very diligently from March through August to put together the core value, the mission statement, and the vision statement that's included in that strategic plan. You actually saw the draft. It's the same draft last spring when the committee had approved a final draft to be submitted to the committee. At the same time, from March through August, the district's leadership team has crafted the district's goals and objectives for this coming school year to align with the core value, vision statement, and mission statement. You also have a copy of those goals, the draft of those goals for this school year. And those goals were submitted to members of the committee for a final review in August so that they could give additional input before they went into the final package that would come to the school committee. So I'm asking that you review the plans, the contents, provide additional feedback, input, and revisions where necessary, and we come to the next meeting with those in hand. I'd actually appreciate if you had any particular input or revisions that you'd like to send to me, since we now have that time. You can do that and email those to me. That would be great to have on hand. And I hope that we can then vote to approve the plan. And as you know, the core value, mission statement, vision statement will serve as kind of our guiding lights to measure and evaluate the district's performance between now from 2009 to the year 2014. The goals and objectives are for this coming school year and are designed to both set a direction and to help us to measure and evaluate the district's performance over the course of this coming school year. So you have those in hand, and I hope that you have review those in depth and get any comments to me prior to the next committee meeting, and we can I can bring those to you to that meeting. Okay, so I'm going to move forward to the preliminary report of MCAS. As you know, or may not know, but the report just went over or outside of the embargo status mid last week. Had already prepared this packet for you, but I do want to give you an overview of the results, and they were also included in the narrative that I submitted to you. I'll give a more detailed school-by-school report in October. But the data indicates that the district scores remain relatively flat, as have the states. The percentage of students who scored at proficient or advanced in reading English language arts increased a little bit, just a bit on average, 2 percentage points, and that was a little bit above the rise across the state in the state's average. In mathematics, the state experienced a decrease across the board. We also experienced, it's an ever so slight decrease. It's less than 0.5%, but nevertheless, it did not. We were hoping for outstanding growth in each area, as was everybody across the state, and it did not come to pass. I would say, as I've probably said here before, we're reaching a point where, having covered not just the first 80 yards of the football field, we've covered the first 90 yards of the football field, and we and other districts are really struggling to get all of our kids up to proficient or advanced by the 2012 school year. At the same time, the state now has only 46% of the state's schools are not have met made adequate yearly progress as of this year's scores, 2009. So over half of the state schools and districts have not made annual yearly progress. Now this is in a state where these same students are at the top of the nation on an array of tests, including the ACT, including the SAT, including the Advanced Placement Test, and including NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. So as much as I do love the standards that have been set for us, because I think they have, by the state, because it is those standards that have allowed everybody in the Commonwealth to excel on all of these other tests, because we are pushing ourselves to death. We are running up, as is the entire state, with a challenge to get those last kids over the goal line. At the same time, 16%. Only 16% of the state's urban schools do not have an accountability status. In other words, they made AYP in all of the areas. And that has gone down 10% over the course of the past 2 years. So the number of districts, be they urban or not urban, that are making AYP and the number of schools is rapidly decreasing as we move from year to year. In terms of our performance ratings, the performance ratings range from critically low to very low, low, moderate, high, or very high. And you get those ratings on both the math and ELA. We had no schools scoring critically low. We had no schools very low. We were low for 2 tests. That is, if you look across all of the schools, 6 schools, 2 tests. That would be, ELA and math. That's 12 tests. We were low for 2 tests, moderate for 5, high for 6, and very high for 1 test. So we're not, again, it represents that in terms of our performance rating, we are at moderate or above on 10 out of our 12 tests. But it's not enough for us to make annual yearly progress. And again, as I said before, our initial response is one of disappointment nevertheless. You want all of the kids to reach proficient or advanced. I think the areas that we have to continue to work on, and we are working on, and we continue to revamp our services, are the services provided to our English language learners and to our students with disabilities. We have significantly revamped both of those programs. Last year it was English language learners program, where we consolidated all of our students in the SCI program in the Salem Wood. We think that we made really good strides there programmatically, and we expect to see some payoff on that during this year. This year we are initiating a restructuring of the special education department, where we are requiring more teachers to provide services to our students who have disabilities. We are concentrating them less in single classrooms where they are together, and we are providing professional development to all of our teachers, supported by what we call a consulting teacher model. We expect that will have an impact. We wouldn't have done it if we hadn't researched it and found that it was a worthwhile investment in making this change. Our special ed students are the ones who are performing the lowest and have consistently been performing low, and where we have struggled most to make AYP and have consistently missed it, it has been particularly for those students who have disabilities. So we needed to make a change, and we have done so, and we are very, very hopeful that change will have a positive impact on their performance in classrooms. We think that in some ways the kids were a little more isolated than they needed to be. Now they are less isolated. They are in with every teacher and every other group of students, and now we have to share the wealth and share the challenge, and we expect to do well. Any questions on that particular point?
Trina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll save most of my comments for your presentation in October. I was wondering if during the course of the year, as was done for the last few years, except last, if we would be having the principals or members of each individual school talk about their school improvement plan. I know that school committees no longer under Ed Reform vote on it, but when we answer back to the constituents, especially when the Boston Globe put out the reports, and we continually fight for funding and tell them why funding's important, etc., how we would answer the constituents when we don't see school improvement plans. I know they're available in the school, but I would really think it's time for the principals and their teams to shine as well. Yes, we know we're X% in this category. Here's what we as a team, along with teachers, coaches, etc., are going to do to address this particular problem. Again, I know we can't vote on it. Hopefully that will be changed in the state level at some point, but maybe at least a brief presentation and some questions if you would take that in consideration during the academic year.
No,
Not all 5 schools at once or anything like that, but
I think that would be a good idea. I would listen to your suggestions as to whether that's in subcommittee or to the entire committee here.
it would be on the entire committee as it was done in the past.
And the schools, as you know, are in the process of updating their school improvement plans, but we could probably start that process in November, have a presentation of 1 or 2 schools in November if that would meet your interest.
And it would be nice. You know, the PTOs have always come to bat for the principals and the assistant principals, et cetera, the teachers itself who worked on the plan, just to come tell briefly what we should be looking at in their improvement plan and what they're proud of, what they feel that they could address, because we hear your goals and your vision based on them, but it'd be nice for each school to say, yep, we do need help in this area, and this is what I, as building principal and my team, is going to do. So I'd appreciate that.
I think it's a very good idea.
Yep.
We will follow through.
Thank you.
Mr. Altrino, other questions or observations, comments on the preliminary MCAS report? Seeing none, we can move along.
The next item has to do with just a brief report on the measures we have taken given the onset of the flu season. First of all, we're very fortunate, knock on wood, that we have not had any cases that have been reported in the schools that we've had to deal with. But we have met with local representatives of the Board of Health. When I say we, that it includes Carol Reynolds, who is our nursing supervisor, to put together a plan for how we are going to address the upcoming influx of flu. First of all, we have already sent out communications to all of the parents and all of the families, both through the schools in text in multiple languages, and we also have it that same information on our website, again translated in all of the languages of our families in the community. We've also, in the schools, they've given orientations to each of the teachers. The teachers are working diligently with the kids, working with them on the appropriate prevention procedures, as well as the reporting procedures if, in fact, the kids are demonstrating any symptoms when they show up at school. Same advice to parents in terms of asking them to make sure to hold their children home if they are displaying any symptoms. Unlike last year, there has been a change in the protocol in that they had recommended that the students stay home from school a full week after the onset of any symptoms. That has changed a bit this year, where they are recommending that upon the cessation of those symptoms and the cessation of taking any medication for those symptoms, the students stay at home an additional 24 hours and then come to school on the subsequent day. So we are getting that information out to parents and as well as to the kids in the buildings. When we met with the Board of Health, we also came up with a tentative plan to provide immunizations during the school day. We felt that we had the option of doing it after school or on weekends or not at all. We decided that it was important to provide assistance during the school day because many of our kids will only have access to these inoculations at that time. So we intend to move forward with that. In addition, we're working, the Board of Health is going to have three free clinic days to provide immunizations, one at the end of this month and 2 in October. We will use our own Connect Ed also to inform parents of those 3 days in advance. And also, I know that the mayor's office has been helpful in terms of trying to search out the possibilities of providing sanitizers in each of the buildings, in each of the classrooms to the kids, have gone out for bids and is making a determination about how we might be able to do that or how the city might help in doing that. Finally, I just need to say that also the teachers and the administrators in the building are really chipping in and doing everything possible that they can to provide on their own some additional sanitizers for kids and really getting the kids into the routine of taking all of those preventative measures to make sure that we don't run into problems. And then finally, we don't know how many vaccines we're going to get. That's the $64,000 question in terms of how many kids we would be able to immunize. And that's vaccinations either for the seasonal flu or for H1N1, two different vaccinations. It sounds like they are going to come possibly around the same time in mid-October. We just have to wait, and we don't know the quantities yet. One piece of good news is that for the older kids, it looks like the H1N1 inoculation is a single dosage, if you will, rather than two, though for the youngest of kids, it remains 2 doses. So we're on top of it. We're staying on top of it on a daily basis, staying in touch with the Board of Health, and as soon as we move forward with more concrete plans, we'll inform all of the families of the same.
Excuse me. Questions on the flu, Mr. Iavino?
Just a question through you, Mr. Mayor. Is there an approximate cost? Has anybody thought of the approximate cost of it, to buy the hand sanitizers for each classroom?
They are on order, actually.
They are on order.
Ms. Reynolds and Mr. Webb brought up the final pricing to our office the other day, and I believe we've sent it along via a purchase order, and hopefully delivery will be any day.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the vaccination programs that you're setting up in the schools, who's going to be eligible for that? So if a parent's going to come in, and is it just the kids that are registered in that school? A parent's going to be able to bring other siblings that might not be in school yet, or get vaccinated themselves?
I mean, at this point in time, the only conversation has been inoculating the kids who are in the school.
All right.
And we haven't expanded the service beyond
that. Yeah, that has to be kind of set out. You'll have a line.
Yep. No, that's a very good question, and we need to be explicit about that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Duffy.
Thank you. In looking at the roster of officials that you spoke with regarding the flu and the H1N1 prevention efforts, I noticed that Hallmark Health is not represented on that list, and I was just wondering if it was a conscious decision to leave out one of the 2 medical centers in our city.
It was not. They just were not in attendance at that particular meeting.
They were invited?
I believe Karen Reynolds did invite them, yes.
Good enough.
Other questions or comments? Okay.
There is one item that came up in conversation with the mayor on Friday that I just want to speak to very briefly. The district went through a comprehensive program review last year through the DES, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, where they reviewed every single bit of work that we do in the areas of special education, civil rights and other general education requirements, as well as our services to English language learners. We received the report on the comprehensive program review, and we did exceptionally well. We were very, very pleased with the report. In the area of special education, out of 47 different areas of scrutiny, we were fully implemented in 44 of the 47, partially implemented in 3, and in no areas did they find that we were not implemented. And we have our responses to all of the areas where there were partial implementation in place, and we are preparing that final report to the state to be submitted on October 2nd. In the area of civil rights and other general education requirements, 20 out of 26 were fully implemented, 6 were partially implemented, none were not implemented. Again, we have our next steps already mapped out in those. And for English language learners education, we had 14 out of 18 were fully implemented, 4 were partially implemented, none were not implemented. A lot of the areas of concern had to do with translations, regardless of which area we were talking about or interpretation, and so we are kind of reassessing our resources and realigning them so that we can make sure that we have the requirement that every single bit of information that we share with the kids, be it handbooks, be it regulations, be it report cards, what have you, be translated. In some cases, we actually had them translated, and there was a small subset of the kids where they didn't get the information. So we largely need to become increasingly diligent in that area. But I feel very, very happy. When you go into a CPR, you worry a great deal about what's going to come out at the other end, and I feel very, very pleased. It speaks to the thoroughness of the district and historically, because it's certainly long before I got here, the patterns that allowed this to happen were put into place, and I feel very, 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 very pleased that we came up with this report.
Mr. Altrino.
Just a brief comment. Superintendent, will we get a summary of the report, just a generic summary and something that we could share with the media as well to, very rarely do you see great news in the midst of this MCAS hassle. Anything we can share with the parents, the media, and the community would be great. So.
Okay. I'll share not only the overall statistics, but I'll also share with you the corrective action that we put into place for each one of the recommendations.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Altrino.
And I believe that's it for my report.
Thank you to the superintendent. Under deliberations, we have several items, subcommittee updates. Any committee chairs can raise their hands at the floor if they have any updates. This early in the school season, we don't expect too much yet. We'll carry that item over into our next agenda meeting.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Altrino.
In November, the committee elected me to be a delegate for Malden Public Schools to the Mass Association of School Committees and Mass Association of School Superintendents Joint Conference. If you would go on to masc.org, there are a list of amendments and recommendations that we're making. One big one is charter school reform. Funding for charter schools, the MASS has been shot down for 6 years in a row. Not prohibiting charter school growth, but holding it accountable in terms of finance and equity. That's one big one. The second one is also seeking approval from the state to approve school improvement plans, which is even more heard of now at MASC because of MCAS scores and school committees' accountability on MCAS scores. So if you look on that and you give me some feedback to take as I represent the body, but would like to hear how you would like me to represent Malden when we vote on these recommendations. Again, they're recommendations sent to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and to the governor as well. But there are some 6 or 7 crucial topics that we will be discussing, and there are probably about 500-600 people attending this conference, so I'd appreciate your feedback.
Steve, can you repeat the website again?
www.masc.org.
Thank you.
And then we'll show you joint conference recommendations.
Thank you.
So, again, I'd appreciate your feedback. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Altrino. His speaking up just triggered a thought. Are there any subcommittee meetings planned that the public would benefit knowing about between now and our next meeting? No? Just in case any of the chairs had scheduled something. Item number 2, adopting guidelines to govern citizens' participation at board meetings. And Ms. Rivera Rogers has brought the item forward. We'll hear from her.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the summer months, we received this adoption of guidelines to govern citizen participation at board meetings from the superintendent. I guess there happened to be a lot of unhappy people that attended a school board meeting in another state. So being this brought to our attention, and I think our board meetings or our school committee meetings are held in an appropriate manner with no violence and no outbursts, but being that it was brought forward, I'd like to recommend that this be sent to the policy subcommittee to look at it.
Second. We will take a vote on it, but we'll still send it to the committees. No harm in that. Vote. Ms. Clerk?
And second,
All in favor?
Aye.
secondly, to be discussed at the policy subcommittee along with the citizen participation. Being that we've had an agenda since I've been on the school committee for 8 years, our evening agenda has always been that the second item is public comment. A lot of times you hear from our community stating, well, yes, we know what comes on the agenda, but we like to make our comments after we hear the school committee members discussing the issues. So at this given point in time, maybe we could consider placing public comment at the end. We could try it out for a trial basis to see. I think it'll encourage citizen participation. It'll get more individuals involved in the process. So at this given point in time, the school committee, the policy subcommittee will discuss it, maybe bring in a couple of recommendations on our evening agenda.
Just a point of information on that point. I think the reason it appears where it does is that by the time the agenda has gone by, we would have taken votes. And the public would have lost their opportunity to put their point of view forward for the committee's consideration. But there's no harm in having the subcommittee consider it. I just wanted to throw that out. The reason I believe it appears where it does is that we get the benefit of what they have to say prior to our deliberations, and it can weigh
Okay,
in.
so then maybe, as a matter of fact, like when we present and send anything to go into our packets and our agenda, usually we send them prior to, and we get the information to the school committee as a whole before we can vote on it. Maybe it could be tabled and voted on at the following meeting like we've had done in the past when there's not enough information. That way it gives the public an opportunity, the board, the school committee itself discusses it. Then it gives an opportunity for the community to respond to what has been discussed and then table it to the following meeting.
I think we're talking this right into the subcommittee for consideration.
Correct. Thank you.
Subcommittee? So moved by Mr. Altrino. All in favor?
Aye.
Anything else on public comment guidelines? No? We covered that one?
Cover that one.
Item number 3, residency affidavits. Again, Ms. Rivera-Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It happened that the first week of school, I made a stop-off at the Parent Information Center. The line was outside in the lobby, parents eager to register their children to school. So I walked in to just say hello. Well, there happened to be a given situation that a parent was there to register their child. She did not have the proper documentation to register, and it didn't appear that she did reside in the city of Malden. Well, it happened that I witnessed an adult, a parent, say to her, rent a room to get residency in the city of Malden. Well, of course, that raised a red flag to me, and I am just curious. I went in and asked some questions, but my questions were not answered to my satisfaction because I understood it that red flags were not raised in given situations. So I'd appreciate a report back from the Parent Information Center so we can question them. And John Parslin, truancy officer, that he gets the paperwork regarding this. I think that a given situation, since it costs us an estimate of $8,000 per student estimate, and that's very low, if we have like 100 students pupils that do not belong in our school district, that's $8 million. So I think it really needs to be looked at, and certain individuals should be red flagged to do a random check on their residency. So report from John Parslin and Parent Information Center at our next meeting.
Questions or comments on recommendation?
May I ask?
I'd let all the committee members ask first. Any committee members have anything? Superintendent has a question.
I want to be clear about what you're requesting, because we've got what I think is a very, very stringent affidavit system in place right now. And if anything, what I get confronted with almost on a daily basis, during the summer and the early part of the school year, is that we're making folks jump through too many hoops, to prove that they live here. So, I just want to be clear as to what you need. Okay.
Well, I don't know if you're aware, but I was on that committee, and when we came forth and brought the residency affidavits. And no, I don't think we're making anybody jump through too many hoops. It's the fact that if there is a red flag given situation, I know John Parslin's supposed to be the one responsible to making sure that the student does reside in the city. So I'm just curious as to if they do raise red flags, because it was commented to me that it is our responsibility to educate students and not to be so concerned. We send them up to the city clerk's office or we do this, but there should be red flags that extra attention is paid. So I just want to know if John is doing this, and I'd like him to come forward and tell us exactly what he does. Other school committee members do not know the policies and procedures that he follows through on checking residency affidavits or even truancy or whatever. So if he just comes forward and discusses with us what he does, and if red flags are put on residency affidavits, and if he checks them out, and what does he do with them, and has he found any cases that they do not reside in our community?
Okay, that's very explicit. Thank you.
Because really, it's costly.
Point of information from the chair, just so that I have it right. Well, Mr. Parslin wouldn't get a case unless it was referred to him, so we're not asking him directly, but is it right, am I correct in understanding what you're saying, do our staff members in the PIC, if they feel under, I think your language is a red flag, if they feel as though there's suspicious circumstances about the legitimacy of someone's residency, do they take it a step further? Or what do they do about it is what you want to know?
Correct.
Okay.
And if they do give it to John Parslin, but because they did indicate that John Parslin is the individual that takes care of it, but if nothing's red flagged to him, how is he to know? So it's really parent information and him.
Mostly you want to hear from what the PIC does about questionable information on residency. Okay.
And John's role in that.
Right.
Correct.
Yep. Got it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera-Rogers. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we can take some points of personal privilege. Below information is a transfer line item. And I know Mr. Furrier, I think it was, had a question on one of the items on there, and we can go over that. Is there anything in there that requires a board vote, or this is informational, the usual informational only packet, Irene?
Though
there's one that does.
I actually have some transfers I'd like to distribute now and ask folks to look at, because we've been trying right through last week to find other funds to pay for these items, but I want to share them with you because these do require school committee approval, and I would hope we could look at them tonight rather than waiting to the next
But
week.
those aren't in the packet. These
are not in the packet.
Okay. Let's handle the packet first,
Okay.
and then you can circulate those, Mr. Superintendent, as we... questions on the information that is in the packet. And
Yes,
Irene, there's a live microphone over here. And having Irene go to this station, by the way, just raises a question for me. Do we know whether or not we're going to have a student
Yes, we are.
representative this year?
Or we don't anticipate until the next meeting.
Okay. Right there, Irene, on your right. Mr. Froyle.
Yes, Irene, on the first page, Ed Supplies CAD High School. What are those? What's CAD? Is that the,
That's the, what's the terminology?
is that the Tech Ed program?
That's that drafting,
Computer-aided
Computer-aided drafting, yeah. Is this money going from, there was money in the budget for the computer-aided
there was
drafting?
budget on those line items. That's
Okay, that was in this year's budget?
wasn't needed, yeah.
Okay, and you just transferred it to print the program studies?
That's right.
Okay.
The principal made the recommendation to shift those funds to cover other needs.
Okay, because
Irene, is that microphone?
that
Is it? Maybe put it a little closer.
that kind of rings a bell with me because I don't know if you realize, well, you were here when we had a graphics program. We provided the program of studies at a very low cost. And all the other work that we did in there probably paid for my salary. So that's all I want to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froyle. Other questions on either other items in the transfer packet? Mr. Ivino has a question.
On page, Ms. Oliver, on page 7, it's not listed as whether or not the school committee needs approval. It's blank. So if you could.
Page 7.
Yes.
And I want to note that there is another one in the packet that needs approval on nursing. So just
Is that the one?
that note.
No, before there is one.
You're right on that one.
That does not.
That does not require school committee approval. Thank you.
Other questions on other items on the transfer sheets? Mr. Winslow.
I just, question, I think it's page 6, where money was transferred to the student information system, and I was just curious as to what that system is that is being funded.
I believe, Sid, that's the new student
new
information startup.
Yep.
Is that correct? Okay.
It's the new, it's called X2. It's a new comprehensive student information system we've adopted for the entire district. It includes all of the information on students right from when they register through grades, report cards, assessment data. It also has personnel components where we can have information on teachers, their background, their degrees, the professional development they engage in, so that can get transferred into professional credits, and then we can crosswalk that with budget. We had a very antiquated system, and this is just a part of the total cost for that system.
So this system helps track grades and student information as well as personnel information?
Everything, health information, lunch forms, free and reduced lunch, the whole system.
Okay, and then I had another question further in. There was a transfer from copier supplies to equipment system-wide. I was sort of vague. That was a $24,000 transfer. I didn't know what that was going to.
Well, I can speak to that too. It's basically because of the high volume jobs that we do so many of them, handbooks and either for the individual schools, information for the entire district, like applications, things of this sort. We really did not have a good high-volume machine. So we moved the money from the copier supplies to the machine to get a machine because it's going to definitely increase economies of scale over time. Also, we were pushing the machines that we had far beyond their capacity. They were breaking down far more often. We'd have to have more service, calls, and so that what we did was we consolidated it. So the schools can bring their individual high volume schoolwork also to have that copied in central office now.
Thank you, Mr. Winslow. Let me get any other first-timers, Mr. Froyo, and then I'll come back to you. Any other first-time questions, observations on the transfers? For the second time, Mr. Froyo.
All right, I don't know if this is the right time to ask this, but I noticed is that printing of this program of studies for this coming year, for the students to make their choices for next year?
I would assume it is, because the program...
Okay, are we going to get a look at that before it is printed, like previous school committees?
You certainly may have a look at that before it's printed.
Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. And one other question, Irene. On the last page, teachers Salemwood 5 through 8, and then teachers industrial arts 5 through 8. What's that all about?
These are funds to cover the payroll for FY10. I believe these are the ones that are on the... are these the stimulus? Do you recognize if these are the ones that are on the stabilization? And we have to wait until
yes, these are well, let me look at these. The teachers in the left-hand column certainly are not on that. But the one on the right-hand side, those are folks who are on grants of one sort or another. I mean, they could be, because they're not, the guidance counselors 5 through 8 are not.
Sometimes the budget is placed so early that people's positions are not where they're supposed to be, so sometimes we have to make those adjustments. But this may be the stabilization funds, which won't come in until January, so we have to fund them out of the regular budget until the money comes in.
Yeah, I should, actually, I'm glad you raised that. The government is not allowing us to use stabilization funds at all right now. So we are having to, during the second half of the year, we will pretty much have to double bill. We'll have to double the number of people who are under stabilization funds to cover those funds which we had to shift over to, city costs during the first half of the school year. I believe it's, not until after Christmas at the earliest that we're going to be able to actually start using those stabilization funds. So that is, you may see other kinds of switches of this sort.
Do we have industrial arts teachers still? Right? Is there...
we do. I believe we have...
At the BB, maybe?
Two, Ferryway and BB, I believe, are the two that we still have, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froyo. Other questions or comments on transfers? Otherwise, thank you, Irene. And
We do have to vote on one of the nurses.
we do have to vote on it?
Yeah, nursing
Can
supplies.
somebody please identify it and put it in the form of a motion?
I make a motion to accept the transfer from the medical supplies nursing to nursing CNA all schools.
Second.
You have it, Jen?
I couldn't hear all, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's on page 6.
Motion on the transfer, second by Mr. Iavino. Call the roll on the vote for the school committee needed approval transfer.
Mrs. Crowe?
Yes.
Mrs. D'Angelo? Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Froyo?
Yes.
Mr. Iavino?
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera-Rogers? Yes. Mr. Altrino?
Yes.
Mr. Winslow?
Yes.
Mayor Howard?
It passes, but yes. The superintendent, under the same topic, has a one or series?
It's a single transfer, but it is a single transfer request, but another number of items on the request that I'd like to present to you. Okay, you'll notice that it's a single amount that's moving over from a personnel account to an operations and management account. I will run through each of the items that are itemized below, so you can know what you are being asked to vote upon. The first 4 items are professional development items, which we did not sufficiently budget for professional development. It's as simple as that. The first 2 items are one person for the business and technical education department to support the professional development work that they are conducting over the course of the year. So it's a teacher stipend to facilitate that work. So whenever they have before or after school meetings or all-day professional development, they have someone who's serving as a team leader, if you will. It's comparable to other grade-level team leaders that we have in the district. That's also true for number 2, and that would be in the area of the arts. And both of those stipends have been vetted, if you will, through the MEA, Malden Educators Association. The third one is a professional development for Middlesex Partnerships for Youth. This is a professional development opportunity that has been offered to members of the district for many years. This is to carry that forward for an additional year. Professional development for the guidance department this is also to carry forward a previous opportunity that was under budgeted this year, and not under budgeted specifically for guidance, but what I did was I consolidated all of professional development into a single sum of funds, and that's where we are falling short. It will not change again over the course of the school year, but at the beginning we recognize this under budgeting. The next one is a licensing agreement for a contract. It's something to carry forward. Again, it's an annual licensing agreement. If we did not pay for it this year, we would have to cease those services. As is the case in number 6, data metric software. We were going to pay that out of Title I accounts, and we have found out just in the last week we wanted to pay for that through stimulus funds, but they are not accepting amendments to the stimulus funds, so we're pretty much locked into that, so we were not able to shift that to Title I. That's what we were trying to do last week, and that's why this has not gotten to you until this evening. And then the last 2 are just educational materials. In both cases, they are for our English language learners, where it was identified during the first 2 weeks of school that for our English language learners, for particular materials that are accessible to them because of their limited English proficiency, we did not have sufficient materials. I felt that was a non-negotiable. We needed to make sure that we did in fact have enough materials for those kids. So that's what's being asked to be shifted. Your approval is needed because it's moving from a personnel account to an operations and management account.
Questions on the outlined items? Ms. Crowe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, just from the transferring from the substitute line, which is always underfunded as it is, and how we can justify moving another $27,000 from that one with something that we always at the end have to try to get enough money to.
Right. No, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. And and we've already put into play. And Irene, you can talk into. Yeah, you want to speak to it first? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
Because of the immediate need right now, we're taking it from the sub-account, but we will replenish that. We're reconciling out all of the individual accounts where people are now placed, but it's labor-intensive because of it's on an Excel spreadsheet, so it takes a lot of time to do. So for right now, we're taking it from the sub-account, knowing that we will replenish that once we find out what our net effect is over all of the salary accounts.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think I'm glad you asked, though, because I think it raises a larger issue. And that is we are reconciling on a daily basis salary accounts, utilities accounts, everything that we possibly can. this actually speaks to a larger concern in terms of, and I don't think it's, I think at the beginning of the year it's particular because you find a shortfall here or there, as was the case in materials, and you want to fill that, and that's something of that sort's not likely to happen during the remainder of the year. But during the remainder of the year, as things move, and as we see, as we have a teacher or another teacher go out on maternity leave, and we need to have a long-term, replacement for them, we're going to have the flexibility to be able to make decisions about our budget and moves in our budget in a very timely fashion on an ongoing basis in ways that we've not ever been asked to do before, or certainly not in a long time. And that's why, and I know Irene and her staff feel under a lot of pressure, because every day I'm asking, for reconciliations. Where do we have a penny? Where do we have a nickel? So I ask your understanding, patience, what have you, as we go through the year, because we are, I think that I work very hard to manage every penny of the budget, and we're trying to make sure that we're not waiting until mid-year or late in the year to find out, oh my goodness, we don't have this or we do have this. We're trying to do it in a very timely manner.
Thank you.
All set, Ms. Crowe?
Yes, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Duffy?
Thank you. Mr. Smith, if you could just clarify item number 3 for me, the professional development for Middlesex Partnership for Youth.
Yeah.
I know in years past that's been a $5,000 entrance fee, if you will, or membership fee.
Yeah.
How does that figure in? Did they give us a reduced price? Is that on top of it?
Special education has agreed to pay for the balance of it. So we're putting, some of that is on 94-142, since they use a lot of the services.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Other observations, questions on the transfer? Mr. Winslow.
Just to clarify, these, items 1 through 8 are things that we have some contractual obligation towards at this moment?
No, not all. It's not long-term contracts. We could see services. We could say for example, Middlesex Partnership for Youth, we do not have a contract that obliges us to provide that service, but it was something that was anticipated, but again, as I said, I did a lump sum for the professional development, and it turned out after we shook it out in September, we were short the funds to be able to pay for this. We could have paid for this and put a different item up here, for which we were $2,300 short. This didn't come up until now because I was just trying to work a deal with somebody, in this case with special ed, so we could share the cost. So that's why it was a little late in terms of, again, this is another example of reconciliating budgets on the fly so that we can make funds available. But we had intended to do this all along.
Other questions? Chair looks to move the transfer under the superintendent's recommendation. Need a motion. Ms. Crowe motions. Mr. Froyo seconds. Sorry, Mr. Duffy. Sorry, his hand. Call the roll. Any other dialogue on the motion?
Just, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Altrino.
I'll approve the motion cautiously as, we really try to set precedents. I know this was a quick thing that the Wednesday before the meeting, we do have some time to look at it so that we can call the superintendent or Miss Oliver and say, is this something we can help you with? Is this something that should go to the... Because this is just, we're only not even 3-4 weeks into the school system, and we're finding these things as Miss Oliver has to go through this whole Excel sheet. What are we going to find out in the October meeting? Because it's a $48 million plus budget. There's no way we can catch a $2,300 thing. So this is going to happen. But if it continues, we'll need, a few days to look at it, call the superintendent, ask for his input. And, we always approve these things. It's just that we're going to find a lot, especially where we're pinching pennies this year. Ample time would be appreciated and by policy. Thank you.
Chair takes it at face value that the administration's intention would always be to give as much heads up on these kinds of things as possible.
Thank you.
But we also trust the superintendent's inclinations in these things. So we have the motion. Seconded, and call the roll, please.
Mrs. Crowe?
Yes.
Mrs. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Foyle?
Yes.
Mr. Iavino?
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera-Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Altrino?
Yes.
Mr. Winslow?
Yes.
Mayor Howard?
It passes, but yes. Any other items under finance? Back to points of personal privilege. Anybody eager to go, or should I just say we start on the right? We'll start on the right since Mr. Iavino. So we're going to start with Ms. Crowe, far right.
The far right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind people that on next Saturday, September 26th, we'll be having the Ferryways back-to-school bowling party at Ryan's Family Amusement starting at 5. We have pizza and bowling and a lot of fun. So come on down.
Ms. Crowe?
Quickly, sorry. My condolences to the Minnie family for the loss of Bill, who was a dear friend and a mentor of mine as I entered the committee at a young age, and he was serving his last term. So to Mrs. Minnie and her children, my condolences as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Altrino. Mr. Duffy?
I would just like to send out my sincere thanks and appreciation to all the people that helped with the BB traffic pattern and parking situation. As many of you may have heard, we tried to do some extensive changing to the traffic pattern around the BB in August. It seems to have worked out quite well, and I'd like to thank Lieutenant Kevin Sheridan, Steve Melanson, Bob, I knew I shouldn't have named names, but there were a lot of people involved, Mayor Howard, Superintendent Sue Vadalaro, and the feedback I've gotten is that it's been very successful. It seems to be much safer, and parents are happy about that. And I would like to really extend my appreciation to the people of Hawthorne Street. They had to make a small sacrifice, and they did it, and they have seen that it seems to be safer for them as well, so it seems to be a win-win. In regards to the parking situation, Sue Vadalaro has a great expression. We're trying to put 10 pounds in an 8-pound bag, and that is exactly what we're trying to do. But we did create some live parking situations, some additional parking spots, and then resident parking windows around the opening and closing of schools. It has gone quite well. It's not going to be perfect, but we've done about as good a job as we can do. But as the winter months approach and the snow starts to get out there, the city is going to do its part to keep as much clear as we can in the walkways. I just ask that the parents and the staff at the school work with us to keep this as successful as it's been in the beginning of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy.
Just a word of thanks to the youngsters from the Malden High School Key Club. There were over 30 members of the Key Club who helped out at the Kiwanis table Saturday at the Harvest Moon Festival in Feldsmere Pond. The weather was spectacular. It was a wonderful time. It was a great activity for the city, and a special thanks to all of those youngsters who gave up a Saturday to help me out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Iavino. On the left, Mr. Froyo.
I would just like to say thank you to Bill Minnie for all he has done over the years for the City of Malden, and for especially the school department. Rest in peace, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera-Rogers. Mr. Winslow?
I just wanted to say that the Salem Wood PTO is having its first meeting on October 5th at 6 p.m. at the Salem Wood School, so encourage Salem Wood parents to turn out on October 5th for that. And then International Walk to School Day is on October 7th, and I know that Salem Wood School will be having a Walk to School Day that day, so keep apprised of that. And those are my couple of comments. Great.
Thank you. I wanted to thank all the staff and families for getting us started on the right foot this year. We seem to, like the superintendent said, get off really, really well, and things seem to be going great, so let's keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D'Angelo. Mr. Iavino.
I would be remiss as holding the seat that Bill had in Ward 4 if I didn't offer my sincere condolences, and I apologize for not having done it sooner. Bill was a friend, colleague, just a tremendous guy who he was really a Renaissance man in a lot of ways. Bill was a writer, he was an artist, he was an all-around good guy, and he cared very, very much about the city and the youngsters at Malden High School. And it's a sad loss for the city, very sad loss, and I want to send condolences to his wife Barbara and Stephen and his other children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iavino. Chair can't improve on that, so just echo those comments. He truly was a unique guy and a mentor to a lot of people, Mr. Altrino, so has a good note on how he approached things. So we do regret his passing, but thank him for all the contributions and his family for, again, the time he was allowed to devote to the Malden Public School System and to Malden in general. Chair also thanks the members of the Malden Golden Tornado Club. We ran an annual golf tournament to help with the effort of funding athletics throughout the system, but especially at Malden High School. So I thank all the volunteers who spent their time to put that tournament together at their own cost, and we hopefully will raise some money to be able to help students be able to continue to play athletics at Malden High School for no cost. Any other points? Otherwise, we can take a motion to adjourn. Second. Motion to adjourn. Seconded. All in favor? Aye. Hey, Gene.